Okay. All right, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to our April Pram Central Chapter meeting. If you're new to Pram, I'm Matt Westerfield. I'm the chapter president this year, but I probably know everybody who's on the call right now. We have a few announcements to make before we introduce today's guest speaker. But first, our Vice President of Membership, Gene Cook, is going to announce our newest members.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So we have 3 professional members joined since last month. Jessica Simeon Lofton from Lofton and Company Brands, who was our speaker last month, and Melissa Wade and Ray Coleman from the Mississippi VA. And then our newest member as of this morning is Lee Streetman from Mississippi College, a student at Mississippi College. So that brings our total professional members, new professional members, to 11 this year, and same for students, 11 new students this year. And our total membership count for our chapter is 108. So we're the biggest chapter in the state by a lot, right, Matt?
Yeah, excellent. No, I'm glad that we're still getting so much interest, despite the circumstances, the pandemic. Now, after Malary speaks, Gene is going to hold a raffle because we are giving away a free registration to next month's State Pram virtual conference. So stick around for that. But first, let's go to Mara Hartman, our Career Development Coordinator, who has an announcement to make. Mara?
I have good news. State Pram voted this past month to reinstate a $100 reimbursement for successful APR candidates, up to the first 5 that apply every year. And as something they did in the past and not done for a while. And so they're joining SPERF and Pram Central and offering this, which means and this is if your employer does not already reimburse you, or if they only reimburse you for a portion of your cost. So the exam is, I believe, $385 to take. So this really covers, between the 3 organizations, of which we're all members by virtue of being members of Pram Central, it really covers the bulk of the cost of that. So I think that's good news for those of you who are in the pipeline or thinking about becoming an APR candidate. The second piece of news has to do with already accredited members, and that is that the UAB is changing the not really the requirements for re-upping your accreditation, but the way they do it. They're going to a CEU format, which they feel is a little more universal with what others do regarding training, continued education. So it just, they thought it made more sense to do it that way. I don't have all of the details on that, and it doesn't start immediately, but we'll have something coming out in our next newsletter, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it on our social channels, and I'll be happy to update everybody once I get a better handle on what they're doing myself, and in a future meeting. In the meantime, if you've got a renewal coming up, or if you're concerned about that in any way, you can always go to PRSA's website. The UAB section has information on accreditation, and there's a lot more about it right there. And that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
All right, thank you, Mara. Okay, yeah, that is a really cool benefit. That's a really great incentive to pursue your APR. It's also a good incentive to make sure that your Pram Central membership is up to date. So now, our VP of Programs, Sophie Wolf, is going to announce our speaker, but first I think Sophie has an announcement of her own to make. So Sophie, why don't you take it?
Thank you. I have a couple of small things. You've probably seen my name in several emails this month because we are doing a membership survey. So I hope that you have taken the time to fill that out. We've had over 50 responses, which is amazing. We are so thrilled with the response. That just goes to show the commitment and passion that people have for the association. And this survey is just getting a feel for how people felt about virtual meetings last year, and also giving us a sense of where you feel for us to make decisions going forward in 2021. So you have until Friday, end of the day Friday, to fill out that survey. I'm going to actually put a link to that survey in the chat after Malary gets started. So if you haven't taken it, go ahead and bookmark it. I would love for you to take that survey, and we'll actually have some survey results to report to members in the future. And we've already seen some themes emerging, and that kind of leads me to my second thing for the day is that in May, and Matt will talk a little bit about this at the end of the meeting, that we typically do not have a chapter meeting the month that state PRAM has their conference. And so May is when we would not have a conference because the state conference is May 13th. But we're going to actually have some details soon about an in-person social gathering outside at the district on May 26th, when we would have had our chapter meeting as an after work social for those that feel comfortable. So we'll have more details about that in May, and I hope that we can see some of your faces soon. But we're excited to have some of this knowledge from our members to make some decisions going forward for the rest of the year. And so I will put that link in the chat soon, but I will go ahead and introduce our speaker today, which is Malary White. And I'll pull up her bio real quick. Malary White serves as the External Affairs Director for the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. She first joined MEMA as the state's Private Sector Liaison in October 2019 and was appointed to her current role in February 2020. Before serving the state, White was a television news anchor and reporter at WBRZ in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and worked in our local market at WJTV Channel 12 here in Jackson. She earned a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism from the University of Southern Mississippi and now has more than 10 years in the public communications arena. She's a Lumberton, Mississippi native who currently resides in Brandon. So we want to welcome her, and I know, Matt, you'll make her a host so she can show her presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Like I said earlier, I believe I've interviewed half of y'all. I've worked with some of you, and thank you so much for having me. I feel like I've learned a lot from you all, just watching your press releases that have come out and things like that. And I try to take a little bit from everyone and hone this craft. I'm going to share my screen real quick because I have a PowerPoint presentation. I just thought it would be easier to get the thoughts across. So, okay, I hope I won't be considered presumptuous for quoting myself, but we have to, each office director has to do a quote for our annual report. And because I started in this position in February of 2020, as you all know, stuff was about to hit and we didn't even really know. I started the same week that the city of Jackson started flooding because of Pearl River. And then all of a sudden COVID hit. So this quote, I will say I am proud of it because this is a big lesson that I have learned during my time here at MEMA. So communicating to the masses requires constant innovation. We must adapt to the new technology, but remember, respect and inform those that do not have the accessibility, capability, or knowledge to use today's communication platforms. We must remain inclusive in communicating to all Mississippians. And I'll elaborate a little bit on that. Whenever I was asked to speak today, it was regarding crisis communication and COVID-19. So to understand MEMA's role in COVID-19, we were named the logistical arm for the state in purchasing PPE. So what exactly does that mean? I'm sure you all remember how all of a sudden it was hard to get masks, it was hard to get hand sanitizer, and it was that way for not just Mississippi. We were competing against our neighboring states. We were competing against countries across the world to get any type of PPE here. It was a dog-eat-dog fight. And some of our PPE meant for Mississippi was actually relinquished to the federal government for other states that needed it. And so these were things that we would talk to the press about when asked about it, to let them know. But one good thing is that Mississippi never lost any money because we paid for PPE and didn't receive it. So understanding MEMA's role in it as the logistical arm, we had to buy a warehouse in order to store our PPE. And that comes with documentation of it, the delivery of it. We delivered to all hospitals and long-term facilities, your retirement homes, your nursing homes. And we also delivered to our 9 districts throughout the state for our counties to have for our first responders, mask, hand sanitizer, bouffants. You can see the list of everything that we've distributed. That's as of March of this year, and more has gone out since then. So we were also in charge of purchasing commodities for vaccinations. So that was also another role that we had, purchasing tents, software, iPads, phones, anything that you see the Guard using giving vaccinations most likely was purchased by MEMA to give them. And so that brings me to my next portion of this is what exactly was MEMA's external affairs role in COVID-19. So typically in a disaster, MEMA is used to being in charge. We are the lead agency whenever it comes to coordinating resources, coordinating other state agencies. That's our job to do. But in a pandemic, we were not the boss. The Department of Health is. And so it was interesting having to take a step back. It was also very nice to say, you have to talk to the Department of Health. We can't tell you that information. But we had to take a step back, and it was lots of conversations with Liz Charlotte of how can we help you? What can we do to make this easier on you and for the general public to understand? Because things were going left and right. We're going to have martial law. We're going to have complete lockdown, shutdowns. You can't do anything. And so we decided on our website is to take some of the really important information that the Department of Health has, along with FEMA information for our locals to get reimbursed for any type of PPE, any type of COVID expenses. And we overhauled our website to make it a little bit easier to access, between funeral assistance from FEMA to information about vaccines. So these are multiple links that MEMA tried to put together to make it a little bit easier. It's a one-stop shop for people to kind of get their COVID message. Another big thing that we did, and a lot of people obviously don't see it from the front end, the public doesn't see it, but we were in charge of informing our county EMA directors, our legislation, and our legislators and our congressional delegation about COVID numbers every day. So for 11 weeks straight, that was my job. Every morning was whenever I got it from the Department of Health, I disseminated it to our county EMAs to let them know of where cases are spiking and things like that. And it was a big job to keep them all informed, because not only that, they were also calling MEMA saying, where's our PPE for our constituents? And so there were a lot of moving parts, especially the first 3 months of COVID, very crazy. I'll just say that. And then not only were we having to message COVID-19, we were having to message COVID-19 in natural disasters. So yes, a pandemic shut the world down, but it didn't shut Mother Nature down. And so we had to keep rolling. We had to keep working. And one of our big questions we got, especially from the national media, what are your COVID-19 measures whenever it comes to sheltering? What are people supposed to do? And our big message is, no matter what, life safety is going to be our #1 priority. Nobody will ever be turned away from a shelter just because of a COVID exposure. Now, our shelters did have to be reworked. They had to have a space for folks to go and separate and isolate from. But luckily, we came out of hurricane season pretty unscathed. Hurricane Zeta did do us a big thing. And that brings me to our next, crisis communication. And how we message not only during COVID-19, but we message these disasters as well. Some things that I've just learned along the way, you can plan and plan and plan. We have a pandemic plan and that got thrown out the door real quick because it all, it branches out, it goes in many different directions, and you learn from your mistakes and you just kind of adapt. And that's what we've had to do in this COVID environment and handling disasters. So a couple of things, keep difficult information as simple as possible. During a crisis, especially a natural disaster, your audience is not thinking clearly at all. They want to know the simple things of where's my money, where can I get help? And so it's our job to treat them as kindly and as fairly as we can, but also providing them with the facts that federal help just isn't here yet. And another thing that we learned is not everyone has an email address. Not everyone has a cell phone. So you do need call centers. You do need to use snail mail to communicate with people, because believe it or not, whenever we got an individual assistance declaration after our Easter tornadoes that happened last year and after Hurricane Zeta, the biggest messenger that we used, a flyer that was sent to everyone in the affected areas via snail mail. Our application numbers skyrocketed after those flyers went out, and you could tell it too. I mean, you could see it in the numbers. And who would have thought in 2020, at this point, snail mail would have actually been the most effective communication? But not everyone is on social media. Not everyone is on their cell phone 24/7, like certain generations are. And so you have to get creative in these types of crises. So radio, you go back to the basics: radio, newspaper, snail mail. And that's truly what MEMA has used to get our message across. FEMA, whenever we have a declared disaster, FEMA comes in, and my counterpart with FEMA, her name's Yvonne Smith, and she's wonderful. And she was like, hey, do you know about gas station TV? Whenever you start filling up your car and the TV screen comes on all of a sudden, she said, I have a contact. Let's use gas station TV to tell those affected counties about individual assistance. And I would have never thought about putting our message on gas station TV, but it actually worked, and we were able to do it. So you have to get creative in a digital age. Sometimes, though, going back to your basics is one of your biggest. I'm at a loss for words, because I was honestly shocked that the snail mail actually worked, because I was like, oh, we'll do this, we'll see. But it was one of our biggest movers and shakers in that. And another thing that I've learned being here is to know your audience, your language barriers, your deaf and hard of hearing, and your visual impairments. One thing that I am proud that we did this year was we took or this past year, and we're doing it again this year, we are taking our emergency hurricane guides and we're translating them into Vietnamese and into Spanish. I talked last week with a organization down on the coast that is called BP SOS, or Boat People SOS, and they are the ones that advocate to the Vietnamese community and inform me we have over 10,000 people on the coast that actually speak Vietnamese, if not more. And then so that's just Vietnamese. Imagine what our Hispanic population is. And so we made an effort to translate not only our hurricane guides, we put out COVID flyers that were translated on how you can register for a vaccine. And we had to do that in partnership, the COVID flyers, in partnership with the Department of Health. And that's been a big, not really a challenge, but that is something that I've learn to be more cognizant of, is working with another state agency, is not to undermine them, not to go above their authority, but to really work together. And I feel like Liz and I have done a really good job of making sure that we're on the same page of this is what the people need to know, and let's make it as simple for them to understand. So another part, as you can see on the screen, you all know, you all saw all of the executive orders, and it's like, what exactly is this saying? So, and I can't take credit for this idea. I stole it from Louisiana. I saw that their governor was doing it. And so I thought this would be a great idea to show people of this is exactly what these executive orders stand for. This is what you can and cannot do. So that's just another way of keeping that difficult information as simple as possible. Another way of communicating, I will tell you, my PIO, Kelly Richardson, none of you can have her. She is mine. She does an amazing job of putting together our infographics. We use these infographics online, in our mailers, and everything. So as I said earlier, people in a crisis, the first thing they want to know is, where's my money? Where's my assistance? Where's FEMA at? And so during Hurricane Zeta, I got the idea from Candyland of all places. And I said, we need to tell people step by step of how exactly this federal process works, of how we get a declaration, how we actually get money into individuals' hands, into their pockets, whenever a disaster happens. And so we wanted to show people, this is it, and this is where we are right now. And we moved the star. And I will tell you, I did not expect to get the feedback that I did, but FEMA loved it. They thought it was the coolest thing. And I was like, well, we're kind of holding you to, getting this process pushed forward. But people have really responded well to this and how we actually go about getting a disaster. And it's a little bit more convoluted than that, but this is the most basic way that we could explain to people of, it's coming, we're asking for it, just be patient with us. Another thing that I noticed whenever I took this position, and this is at no fault of the general public, because who would actually know this? But the difference between individual assistance and public assistance, it kind of sounds like the same thing. But let's just say individual assistance is what you want whenever there's a disaster, because that means money is coming to you. Public assistance means money is going to your local governments to fix your roads. And then the 3 ways to apply, whenever we had a disaster declaration for Hurricane Zeta, this was part of our mailer that we put out. It was a trifold. And we just thought it was the easiest way to tell people, you can do it online, you can do it on phone, you can do it by app. And that also brings me to talking about knowing your audience. A lot of things changed during COVID-19, and one of those was actually FEMA's response. They have done amazing, but because of COVID, they moved everything virtually. Well, in Mississippi, we all know not everyone has access to a phone, not everyone has access to internet, and not everyone understands an application process with the federal government. And so MEMA took it upon ourselves to open disaster assistance centers that we placed with our disaster reservists, which is a wonderful program. Anyone can sign up for it. We placed our disaster reservists in these centers in the counties that were actually eligible for individual assistance, and we signed people up, mask on, hand sanitizer right there. We didn't have a choice. These people who may not live in the type of luxuries that we have, they deserve to have assistance just as much as anybody else. And sometimes you just need a little help in going through the application process. So MEMA said, we're going to do it. We're going to set them up. We'll run them. We'll man them. And I will say a big thank you to UMCOR, our United Methodist Center on Recovery. They helped us execute this beautifully, and it really did help. We had a lot of people come to these centers, especially your older population who's not so tech savvy. And so that was just another way that we had to innovate during COVID-19. So just a little bit about our disability community. So Mississippi is one of 4 states that actually has a disability integration advisor. Her name is Amber Hall, and one of 4 that actually works on the state level. FEMA has a lot of them. And what Amber does is she keeps me in check to make sure that everyone has access to what we are saying. So she's responsible for, in any of your press conferences that you've seen with the governor and my director, she's responsible for getting that sign language translator there. She's made sure that they are there and ready to work. but around 693,000 adults living with a disability in Mississippi. And I will say we have a wonderful relationship with Department of Rehab Services, because that's Jan's part too, where they come in and they provide the sign language interpreter. So thank you, Jan, and for your team for everything that y'all do to keep MEMA in check, to make sure that our folks are getting what they need. Another thing that they did for us, they actually translated our hurricane guide into Braille. And that, I believe that's one of the first times I ever saw them do that. Another thing that we're working on is to make sure all of our social media posts are screen reader capable. Which means, and we rely heavily on infographics, but that means that we've got to start putting the content of the infographic into the actual post so a screen reader can read it. And so that's a lesson learned that we are working on and trying to make it more compatible for our folks out there that have disabilities. Rumor control. This is so much fun. Martial law's being declared. Tate Reeves put out a press release about it. We actually had this happen, and I called the governor's folks and I said, hey, we all know it's fake over here, but we're going to put something out about this if you're okay with it. And they said, absolutely. We've had another one with FEMA. Again, in crisis mode, people want to believe that an $800 food voucher is being handed out because they're desperate. After Hurricane Zeta, within 5 hours after the storm hitting, we had people blowing us up, needing food, needing water. And so they're willing to believe anything that comes across their screens. And for some reason, somehow they managed to text this to a bunch of people in Mississippi. So we address the rumor, set the facts, set the record straight, and provide them of where they can actually get the information from. This can be very dangerous, and this is something that I've seen quite a few times. And a lot of people always put it on FEMA for some reason, that they're the ones doing it. But just try to inform the public of where they can actually get the real information. We promote our TV stations because they'll have it, and of course our website and things like that. And if individual assistance is actually available, you'll most likely get a mailer as well to let you know. So COVID-19 lessons learned. These are just like right off the top of my head, but trust me, I have learned and been humbled many a times during this COVID-19. The very first press conference we tried to do at MEMA, it crashed because everybody had the Zoom link and not just the media. So we learned to have an RSVP page for your media. We used a jot form on our website so they could go and reserve a spot. We did have to respond back to them to give them the Zoom link so they could go in and get it. I highly recommend having a media monitor on your Zoom. So for me, I'm running the press conference. I'm trying to pay attention to what Governor Reeves is saying and where he's pointing next to ask a question. And luckily I had a media monitor, thank goodness, because there was a reporter that I don't know if he was fully dressed and he was about to ask the governor a question. So we had to take him off of the Zoom. True story. And Another big thing, and we are huge about a COOP plan, a continuity of operations plan. And I'm sure you've all learned this because you've all experienced COVID for over a year, of just how important it is to identify your personnel that's necessary for your day-to-day operations. If those are the ones that actually have to be in the office, go ahead now and identify them. We actually have a COOP plan where it's written out that these personnel, and we're identified by job titles, have to come to the office. These can stay home. But if they do stay home, they have to have all the technology available to them. And we have to make sure that they actually know how to use Zoom or Teams. That we've done a few Teams meetings, and this is how you run it. This is how you work it. And so these are just a few of the things that we've learned during COVID on top of Mother Nature and crises. And so it's just one of those things that I've kind of learned as I go, trial by fire. And I can't thank the people enough that I've been able to rely on. Ray Coleman is one of them. He was the one that had my position before he left. And so it was wonderful to be able to have those folks to lean on, because we were all going through something unprecedented. And I swear, if I heard that word one more time, especially with the hurricane season that we had, that was historically active. And then we set a record for the widest tornado that year. And it was one of those things that I just thought, man, and it's finally feeling like, I don't even know if I want to say it. It finally feels like it's starting to slow down as we get ready to go into hurricane season. But just lots of lessons learned. That's just kind of the 30,000 foot one that I can say. And just thank you all for the opportunity. There's one other thing. There's a book I highly recommend. It's called The Communications Golden Hour. If you've never read it before, by Doug Levy or Levi. I'm not really sure how he says his name, but I highly recommend this book. It talks about, do y'all remember when Hawaii did the really bad EAS alert that a bomb was coming? And it talks about that. It talks about lessons learned from the historic wildfires and things like that. One of our big questions that I've gotten is, why didn't we do an EAS for a lockdown? And we just felt like it wasn't necessary to do an EAS for a lockdown or for, a shelter in place. We do know a couple of other states did, but it wasn't one of those things that we felt was necessary, because we felt like everyone was getting the information that they needed. And whenever we put out an EAS, we want people to really pay attention to it. And we're actually training right now for our Grand Gulf nuclear incidents and going through all of that. And it's been eye-opening as to what we can do during a disaster. But anyway, thank you all so much. I truly appreciate the time. And just thank you. It's a blessing to be a part of this group and to have people that we can lean on and talk to. And, what's your opinion on something? So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mallory. That was great. I completely agree. I got sick of hearing the word unprecedented. I'm trying to find, synonyms for that. Does anybody have questions? Certainly folks have got some questions for Mallory.
I have a logistical question. You talked about mailing to people in a certain region. How do you get their addresses?
So there are printing companies. All you have to do is give them the zip codes of every county that you need, send it to them, and they will mass sell it or mass send it to everyone with that zip code. And this is it. I'll show you the mailer. This actually came in really handy. So it looked like this from the front. And here's your FEMA. This is how you apply for it. And then it was a fold out of your individual assistance, your SBA assistance, and then the documentation that you needed to apply for those types of assistance. And we get reimbursement from FEMA because this is emergency communication, which really comes in handy.
Mallory? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask about the fake news pieces that came out, especially the one with the governor that was the letter. Was that shared on social media, and was it caught or not caught by like Facebook and Twitter with their warnings? And what did you do to combat on social from that?
So I saw it shared on my social media, like one of my friends shared it. And so I screenshot it. Yeah. So I screenshot it and I sent it to the governor's communications folks. And I said, hey, I want you to be aware of this. This is what's going on. Do you want me to address it? And they said, yeah, sure, you can address it. Because we knew it was obviously fake. And his executive orders do not look like that. And so what I did, I just, formatted it, put scam or fake or something, whatever I put on it. And then I just shared it on my social media or MEMA social media. And I believe there were a couple of other state agencies that shared it as well, which really helps. And that was one thing. I don't know if y'all remember Renee from the governor's office, but she was really into everyone, like every other state agency sharing what's being put out. And I really like that coordination. So we're all on the same page, especially the executive agencies. Not every state agency is an executive agency. And so it was really nice to have that type of relationship with all the executive agencies sharing the same information. And if I feel like it's not getting enough play, I will call up some of my contacts in the media and say, hey, can you run this for us? Can you let people know that this is actually a scam? They jumped more on the FEMA one than they did the one with the governor. But yeah, that's how we handled it.
Malary, did you ever find out who was responsible for any of these fake communications? And if so, no?
No, unfortunately, we never did. And you mentioned, you know, like Facebook catching it and things like that. Unfortunately, never caught. Which kind of baffles me as to why it was never caught. So we kind of have to do our own patrolling. And I think there are social media companies out there, like contractor companies that will monitor that type of stuff on social media for you. But as a state agency, that's just too expensive for us to purchase that type of stuff. And so luckily, it was just something I was able to catch. Another thing is we will have people call us, and we're manned 24/7 here. And so I would get things into the watch desk and they would say, hey, people are asking about these $800 vouchers. They're asking about martial law and everything. So I will say it did help having those press conferences every week to kind of ward off some of the fake news.
Malary, can you tell us more about gas station TV, like the messages that you put out and how that worked for you?
Yeah, so FEMA was the one that actually organized it for me, and she does have the contact information, so I have no problem sharing it with y'all. I have to go back and find it. But basically what she did was she sent them a script. They recorded it with their person, and then it went out. I don't know the pricing of it. I'm not really sure if they would charge in an emergency situation, but I'm more than happy to share that with you, Jan. It is really cool though, because the reason I was excited about it, and I shared it with my MDOT folks, is what if we have contraflow? What if we have a mass evacuation? The first thing people are going to do is go to a gas station to fill up. So you start pumping the gas and it says, you're under a mass evacuation. If you're on so-and-so, you have to take I-10. If you're on so-and-so, you have to go. So we could craft our message there. I think they're just the ones that have to record it with their robot voice. That's the best way to say it. But yeah, it is a new tool. I'll tell you another tool that we found very helpful was Nextdoor, the neighborhood app. We have started using Nextdoor for multiple things. So during bad weather, Warren County shut down their vaccination site. So John Elfer, their EMA director, asked me if I would send a message directly to Warren County residents about it being shut down. Send it out, no problem. People were like, great, thank you so much for letting me know. Another situation is we had 6 counties get individual assistance for Hurricane Zeta. So we only sent it to those 6 counties to let them know, hey, the deadline's approaching. You need to go ahead and apply for individual assistance.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling Jackson Public Schools. This is Georgette. How may I help you?
But we got a great response from that, from folks. And they said thank you. And the impressions that we got, I wasn't expecting to get, 50,000 impressions from folks, but people are seeing it on Nextdoor.
Malary, we had someone ask in the chat if Nextdoor charges you or if it's free for you to use.
So I will say it is free for us. I do know of another state agency where they said they would start charging them soon. So I don't know if it's free for us for right now or if it will continue to be free because we're an emergency agency. sometimes we get a few freebies because of our title.
And I'm
I'll
also
take it.
I'm also curious, as someone who also works at a state agency, the collaboration with other state agencies, did you find that it was best to just have kind of an email roundup? Did you use Teams or Slack or something else to communicate and to send content to other agencies?
It was mostly email. Some of y'all on here may have received, and I'll send it. If you didn't, I will send it to you as well. A lot of times I have a distro list of all my PIOs for state agencies. And I'll send y'all out stuff for like the FEMA funeral assistance. That's not a MEMA thing. So email has worked best for us. However, because it is my responsibility, if we were to have a disaster and I needed to set up a joint information center, I would have a Zoom meeting and we would all have all right, you're part of the state agency that has to respond to our JIC. And that calls, I have the authority to call all state PIOs to come and work in the JIC if need be. If we were to have some type of catastrophic event, and you would be answering phones, you would be writing a portion of your press release for the whole entire State Emergency Operations Center. I mean, it's a whole thing that we get to coordinate. I did have them write a virtual JIC for us so we could work virtually. You wouldn't have to physically come into MEMA. But we would be communicating via Zoom. I'd want to be able to see everybody to make sure we're all on the same page. And actually, I was asked by the local PIOs on the coast to start doing that the next time we have a hurricane. So all of our local PIOs can be on the same page as state as well. And so I think that would be a great partnership to have, because Harrison, Hancock, Jackson counties are phenomenal in their responses. And so at MEMA, we just amplify whatever they need us to do.
Malary, I'm always curious about this, but what does your staff look like in external affairs?
So for a majority of the COVID, it was just me and one other person, Kelly Richardson, our PIO. But now I have a videographer. His name is Eric Bullard. I stole him from a TV station. He was actually my photographer whenever I was a reporter. And we also house the Business Emergency Operations Center, which is excellent. And if you're not a part of it, I highly recommend you being a part of it. Our BEOC that was my baby whenever I first started here. And our Private Sector Liaison, her name is Jessica Ori, talks directly to your mom and pop, to your Lowe's and Walmarts during a disaster. Lowe's, Walmart, Home Depot are ready to go and donate water, goods, anything that you can think of. And so we help coordinate with getting those donations down to the affected areas. And that's what Jessica does. She ensures that the residents actually get what's needed. Now, of course, with Zeta, we had to call in FEMA because we were watering and feeding and giving tarps out to hundreds of thousands of people. But Lowe's stepped in. Verizon stepped in and brought a charging station because no one had power. So they needed their phones. So they came in and did charging stations for us. That was something that we coordinated with them. A lot of times, though, they'll reach out to us and say, hey, we're ready. You just let us know. And that's very helpful. When COVID hit and we started asking for hand sanitizer, like, hey, do you have anything to donate? Could you donate anything? They weren't able to. All their supplies were. And that was something people didn't realize. Whenever a national state of emergency is declared, everything freezes and everything goes to the national stockpile. And that's what happened. That's why we weren't able to get the mask and things that we needed from the feds. And we had to go out and buy our own. That was a little more than what you asked for. Sorry.
No. A related question is, when COVID hit, what kind of hours were you working? You said something about how MEMA is staffed 24/7.
Yeah, so I and this really isn't an exaggeration. So our office is manned, or our building is manned 24/7, 365. We are the state warning point. So anytime an Amber Alert comes through, a disaster like a dam breaks, things like that, your EMA director has to call us because we have a call down list that we have to do. We have to alert MDEQ, DPS, things like that. So our state warning point's always manned. My hours, I worked Sunday through Saturday, 7 days a week for 11 weeks straight. And my hours varied. I was getting phone calls at 9, 10 o'clock at night from people wanting, masks. And it wasn't just, it was like our lawmakers needing masks for their constituents and things like that. And I will say Governor Reeves's mask program, the community mask program that I think we gave out more than 7 million, was excellent. And I am happy to report that if we do have another round of COVID, we have a state stockpile that will get us through at least the first 30 days for the entire state. That's for your hospitals, for your long-term care facilities, and your first responders. And that was something we were kind of mandated to do, but we went above the limit, and we have more in our stockpile than what's actually really mandated for.
Let's hope we don't need that anytime soon.
I pray we don't. But the thing is it's a climate controlled facility. So the mask and all are good to go for right now. So they're in good hands. No face shields will be melting in the Mississippi heat.
Any other questions for Malary? Okay. Malary, would it be all right if we shared your slides, your presentation?
Absolutely, yeah, that's not a problem. I can, Sophie, you want me to email it to you? Sure.
That would be great.
That's not a problem.
Great. Well, thank you for speaking today. This definitely is a fascinating subject, and yeah, you're kind of, the ground zero, tip of the spear. So great work. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I could not do it, and I would be terrible for not saying it. I could not do it without my right-hand woman, Kelly Richardson. Eric Bullard has been the godsend that we needed because no one reads anymore. Everyone watches videos. Yeah. And so he has been amazing. And Jessica Ori, you may not see what she's doing out front in front of the whole entire public, but she's doing amazing things with our volunteer communities and getting people the help that they need. We just do it very quietly. So thank you all so much. And my team, yeah, none of y'all can hire them. They're mine, but I'm very proud to have them on my team. And our leadership has been amazing as well. And Director McCraney has really empowered us. And I said it one time before, Greg Michelle finally gave me not finally, but for once in my professional life, I had a seat at the table. And that was all thanks to Greg Michelle and Stephen McCraney. And that meant a lot.
Yeah, that's so important. And I was wondering earlier, what was that like, that transition in leadership in the midst of a pandemic?
So it was, we knew it was coming, and then he got COVID. And so it kind of delayed it a little bit more, but it really has been seamless. And his main philosophy going forward is people, people, people. And we're going to take care of our MEMA folks, make sure they're good. We're going to take care of our EMA directors, but they're all Mississippians, and we're going to take care of all Mississippians to ensure that they have what they need after a disaster. And I think that's one of the most wonderful mottos that he can have, a mantra that he can have, and he really is living up to it. And he's asked us all, how can we serve the people, people, people? And we're all brainstorming about better ways to do outreach and inform people of things that are actually available to them that they may not have known. And but Stephen McCraney is one of those people that he can like me, can be a little long-winded, but he is one of the best human beings that I know. His wife is a nurse, so he has another perspective of the COVID environment, and he's had tons of experience. He worked the BP oil spill. He worked Hurricane Katrina. He has, served overseas. He's done all of it.
Wow.
If you ever see him, ask him about his 9/11 story, where he was during 9/11. It was pretty interesting as well. So.
Interesting. Now that's a good point, because that's something I've thought of working here in state government, is that the different state agencies, we might serve different populations, but we try to keep in mind that we're serving all Mississippians, either directly or indirectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes a lot of people look at MEMA as like, so what do y'all do? You only work during bad weather, and it's really much more than that. We're constantly doing preparedness. We're training people. So just FYI, FEMA does PIO courses. If you ever want one, they have changed it though. So I'm getting trained on the new PIO course where I can actually teach it. So I can teach and train other people in emergency PIO. But it's actually, FEMA courses are open to all of you if you ever want to take one. You don't just have to work for a state agency. It's actually better if you work for a business to kind of see what's happening behind the scenes with your government and how they make their decisions in responding to an emergency.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I've taken some of that training, but it's been years, so I'll probably need a refresher here soon.
Yeah. As soon as my virtual, so we're doing a virtual training with FEMA. Mine is June 1. So after that, I am available to start teaching PIO classes. So I will send stuff out to folks if y'all ever want to take one.
Excellent. I imagine a lot of these folks will take you up on that.
Thanks. It's interesting. It really is. They're fun.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else from Malary before we move on? Thanks again, Malary. It's been great having you.
Thank you all so much. Bye.
Now, before we wrap things up, we're going to have that raffle for the free conference registration. So remember, this is the PRAM 2021 virtual conference set for May 13th. Regular registration is now underway. A little while ago, I meant to do it earlier, but I uploaded into the chat the agenda for today's meeting. And that includes a link to where you can register for the conference online. But before you do that, Jean is going to hold our raffle. So Jean, are you going to share your screen?
Yep. Okay. There it is. All right. This is our spinning wheel. So we have 75 people on this list who are eligible for the raffle, who have renewed or joined this year, and I have your people's corresponding names and their corresponding numbers. So I'm going to spin the wheel and see who it is. I don't know if you can hear that music.
You should
All
have
right.
done spinning wheel.
Okay, the winning number is 54, and that's Nell Knox at the Mississippi Archives. And so we're going to contact her and see if she wants to take advantage of this free registration. And if not, we'll internally spin the wheel again until we get someone on our list who's able to go to the conference. So
Perfect.
Thanks for that. All right.
Thank you, Jean. Another thing I meant to ask is if anybody else present today has any announcements they'd like to make. I want this to be, an open forum for the entire chapter. So if you have anything you'd like to throw out there, or if you'd like to, be thinking about for the next meeting that you'd like to announce, keep that in mind. And then, let's see. I mentioned the conference, so go check out the PRAM State online for details about the conference, when it is, who's speaking, all that good stuff. And Sophie mentioned about the survey. And then Sophie, I'm sorry, did you mention earlier the social?
I did briefly, but if you want to mention it again, that's great.
Okay, yeah. So instead of having a May chapter meeting, we usually don't have a chapter meeting the same month of the state conference. So instead, we're going to try an in-person PRAM Central Social. It'll be on the same date, but it'll be after hours. Right, Sophie? And those details will be coming. Yeah, I think we'll kind of save the rest of the details for now, but just pencil that in, May 26th. And we're going to have a safe but in-person social. So if nobody has anything else, I think we can adjourn. Thank you all for attending today. All right.
Thank you, Matt. Good to see everybody.
All right. Y'all have a great week.
You too.
Bye-bye.